Welcome to the SA Music Box. We haven't had one in a while, and that's because we haven't had a guest who was worthy, but we do today. We have Benjy Mudie, who many of you are very familiar with. Not only is he a DJ on the station and does the show before this one, but also is an industry legend with a long track record, which we're going to unpack tonight on the SA Music Box. Benjy, what a privilege to have you on the SA Music Box.
Thanks, Ivan. Good to be here.
So we've been planning this for some time because we've been doing shows back to back.
Correct.
And like me, you share an incredible passion for local music and have for the better part of 40 years, or for most of your life, I would say.
Yeah.
Now, it's almost impossible to read out your biography because I was looking at a document the other day, and the number of bands that you've influenced or been directly or indirectly involved in is just too long to list.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long journey. I mean, you know, originally I was a musician, you know, in the East Rand in Brakpan.
Void.
Yeah, Void. Who then
your
went
Void
on to
days.
be, the Void days before.
What were those antiques that you got up to that made you so unmanageable in those days?
Oh, well, there were things like climbing on walls and jumping onto tables.
Right.
I was originally a singer.
Yeah.
But my live act was a little bit too wild. So then I became the bass player and progressed from there.
I want to put that into perspective for the audience.
Yeah.
Right? Your live act was too wild for what was the 70s.
Yes.
How wild was it? Oh my God.
Oh no, it was very, very wild.
Wow.
It was pretty trippy. I mean, part of my act was setting things alight on stage.
Okay, that would count as wild. Yeah.
So at the Pope John Hall in Brakpan, I took a side tom-tom and poured methylated spirits on it and put it on my head and ran around on the stage. It was part of an act. We used to do Arthur Brown's Fire, which was a big hit in 1970. And I would run around with this thing on my head, flaming the crown and everything. And then the curtain, the curtain caught light. So that was the end of the Catholic Pope John Hall.
Yeah. I would seem to think there was a bit of Andy Kaufman in you there.
Definitely.
Rebellious streak. And then you took to bass, obviously, after that.
I took to bass after that, played with them. We played all around the East Rand and everything. And then I got a job working in a record bar in Hillbrow. And then eventually moved to Hillbrow.
And that was the EMI Record and Tape.
EMI Record and Tape Centre, opposite High Point.
Yeah.
And I had a flat in Hillbrow.
And those were the days when EMI still sold kettles and toasters, isn't it?
Yeah, not in our shop. Our shop was the kind of flagship record shop, and it was a great job because you would go in the morning, open up, put on the music, and that was it. It lived and breathed and ate and slept music.
Yeah.
And then I met the guys from, when was it? In early 76. I met the guys from Weir Records who just opened up in South Africa. And they said, and I got on really well with them, and we talked about music and we talked about the Eagles. And then they came in and said, do you want to come work for us? I went, yeah, all right. So 325 Rand a month.
Yeah.
I moved over to Weir Records, and that began that kind of whole journey of music.
And to the other side of the music industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I gave up playing, because you had to really be dedicated. And it was something I wanted to do. I mean, a perfect job. You made music all day and you would party all night and meet lots of girls and get into clubs for free.
So your first job was as a junior AR executive in Weir.
My first job really was a kind of a gopher, I used to do different things for them and run around. Then I became the head of disco promotions.
Yeah.
And started the first disco promotion.
Well, that's a cool thing to have. I'm assuming you were in your early 20s or somewhere.
I was 21.
Yeah.
And disco was just starting to happen.
Yeah.
So you had Cerrone, you had the Tramps, you had the Temptations and all of that happening. And I was, again, it was disco was, for me, was a great social thing because there were lots of girls.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. And then I became an A&R guy, and then I became the head of Warner's A&R. Then I became, and it kind of, and 2 years from the day I started, I signed my first band.
2 years after you started.
Yeah.
Now, I saw, I caught some pictures on social media quite recently of pictures you posted from the Weir Record days.
Yes.
And I couldn't help but notice, and it's a question I've been dying to ask you. Did the men, or is it true that men in the industry in those days had more chest hair than men do nowadays?
Oh, yeah.
Because everyone had their buttons open.
Absolutely.
Everyone had a full chest of hair.
And a chain.
And a chain and a beard and hair.
And hair.
And that includes you, by the way.
I don't think I was that chesty, though. I mean, I was small compared to all those other guys. But yeah, big hair. Yeah, absolutely.
The thing I'm most curious about in those days, because I joined the music industry in the mid-90s, which is obviously some way after. I mean, you had a lot of experience by that point when I joined. What was the mindset like in the 70s going into the 80s in the record industry? Because it was a thriving business in those days.
The mindset was to have fun. I mean, it's different now. Now it's all about the money and the figures and the market share. But back then it wasn't. It was about making music, making good music and having fun. And making money was a byproduct of that.
Yeah.
It was almost incidental. And, you know, being part of WEA, which was one of the biggest recording organizations in the world, I mean, we made money hand over foot, whether it was Fleetwood Mac or whether it was Phil Collins or whatever. But it gave me the flexibility to indulge my love of finding artists.
Yeah.
So the first one was Backstop. Joe Bangles was the first. It was my first signing, my first number one. So I hit it lucky first time.
Yeah.
The band didn't last, but they were a really great band in that sort of ZZ Top, little feet kind of.
I remember them well. I actually featured a track of theirs about 2 months ago.
Yeah.
On the show.
Yeah.
Just bringing back some memories for people. You know?
Yeah. They were great. They didn't last long. I mean, they smoked far too much weed.
Yeah.
But they broke up but it was the beginning of my quest to find artists that I felt were relevant and had something to say. That's always been the litmus test.
Yeah. What made you click, or what clicked in you that gave you a sense that you had a natural talent for, or a natural eye for raw talent?
I wish I knew.
Because I would say, I mean, and you're quite humble, but I would say that you always have. But at what point did you know, like, okay, this is something I can do well?
Evoid was the... well, no, actually, Leslie Ray Dowling was the first really big signing commercially. In other words, a record that sold.
Yeah.
But Evoid was the first artist that I signed that became almost Beatle-like in the sense that there was hysteria over them. I mean, there was the fashion aspect. There were these great hooky pop songs. There was incredible live performances, and they became absolutely massive. That's when I thought, well, you've hit it on the nail there, and that's what I was always looking for, is to find that little zeitgeist thing
that evolves into that magic. Yeah.
But sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't burn all the time.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean to say that the music, it doesn't happen, wasn't relevant. I mean, I've signed many bands that I love, absolutely love, that have never sold.
Yeah.
To me, selling records or selling music was not the aim. To me was, is the band relevant, or is the artist relevant? Do they have something to say?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Your first song that you've chosen for SA Music Box is by Falling Mirror. It's a track called Highway Blues. What made you choose that song as your first choice?
Well, I've always been a Falling Mirror fan. I mean, they are a cult band. I mean, they are, Syd Barrett era Pink Floyd kind of band. And I heard them in 1979 on Zen Boulders, the first album, and I just absolutely loved the fact that they were so different to anybody else. I mean, lyrically, they were so off the wall. The second album, The Storming of the Loft, to me is a masterpiece in rock. And Highway Blues, for me, when you listen to that beginning, those chiming guitars and how it just builds and builds, and Neelan Marais's almost neo-poetry take on life. And I just loved them. I mean, I did 4 albums with them, and only Johnny Calls the Chemist became commercially successful.
And that's the song that most people remember.
Well, you can play that anywhere now, and it was always. It's really strange because it's such a psychotic song.
Yeah,
it's about obsession and alienation, and a true story about a girl in a chemist shop, Weinberg Chemists, down in Cape Town, and who Neelan, the lead singer, was obsessed with, to the point where they had to get an order against him. Oh, it's a very...
I did not know that.
Oh, yeah, no, that's what Johnny Calls the Chemist is all about. Her name was Colette, and he was obsessed with her because he used to get his medication at Weinberg, and he became so obsessed that he would stand outside the window. If you look at the artwork of the vinyl album, you see him standing outside looking in.
Stalkerish.
Stalker. Oh no, it's a very psychotic track,
Wow.
and everybody thought it was. Oh, it's such a hummable kind of
let's sing
ditty. Let's sing along with it.
Well, there you heard it from Benjy Mudie. His first choice on SA Music Box tonight is by Falling Mirror. It's a track called Highway Blues of the Storming of the Loft album.
Looking for a woman who has diamonds and spring in her hair. Looking for the people, and I know they exist, but not everywhere. When we finally see that it's all.
Welcome back to the SA Music Box. My guest tonight is Benjy Mudie, and that was his first track by Falling Mirror, a track called Highway Blues. Benj, in all the bands that you've seen, and you sort of touched on it earlier, is there anyone that was not signed, and you think, well, I kind of wish I'd done that. I wish I'd signed them.
Wow. Never been asked that before.
Oh, you're welcome.
I would love to have signed Brenda Fassie, because she had that thing.
She had everything, actually, somehow. Right?
But she had not just the star quality and the voice and everything, but she had that magic bubble that you need to be a superstar worldwide.
The
And
stardust.
she could have, She could have been, I mean, they called her the Black Madonna.
Yeah.
I just loved her. I loved her sass, and I loved her vigor, and I loved her attitude.
Attitude was great.
And I mean, I got on well with her. I mean, she got a little freaky as she got older, and she sunk into addiction.
Yeah. Well, that's when I got to meet her at a very late stage of her career. So.
I mean, she once bit me on the shoulder.
Did it leave a mark?
It actually did. She bit me at a Sama Awards when we had won Sama Awards. I think it was for the Vicky Sampson record, Zai.
Yeah.
And we had scooped all the awards for Vicky and African Dream and everything. And they were interviewing me afterwards in the foyer, SABC. And the next minute I heard this voice behind me and went, "Hey, don't talk to this guy. You must talk to me. I'm the real star." And then chomped me on the shoulder. And I knew it was her. And I was like, "Brenda, for God's sake," I thought she was an absolute superstar. But you know what? Her star burned bright, and then it faded.
Faded quickly.
And that's pop music for you.
I think she also found it difficult in the latter years to maintain the expectation, the lifestyle, which is one of the biggest things. It's hard things for bands to do. It's part of the A&R of a band, discovering a band, and do they have the longevity? Can they go beyond a certain period? I mean, people forget that the Beatles only really were around together for about 8 years, including their non-release years in Germany. That's not a long time.
No, not at all.
But they did a lot in a short space of time. But
Absolutely.
unsustainably,
But pop music's not supposed to be permanent.
Yeah.
Pop music's supposed to be transient.
Part of its inherent beauty is its non-permanence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
Absolutely, yeah.
we should
So Brenda, another band, I think Via Africa, I thought, because, Roddy Quinn and I were we were like sort of opposition guys in those days.
Yeah.
Roddy was with EMI.
That's
He's now, runs real concerts. And Roddy had like Peach, and I had the Asylum Kids.
Yeah.
And then he had Via Africa, and I had Avoid.
The Asylum Kids.
Yeah.
Wasn't Gary Rathbone in that
No,
band?
Gary was in. Gary Rathbone was in.
I think
Who were they in
Asylum as
again?
well. Yeah.
He wasn't. No, that was Robbie Robb from Tribe After
okay.
Tribe. Gary's in the
Rathbone was
Spectres. Yeah.
But he played. I think he played in Asylum Kids for a short while. No, not at all.
No, not at all. No.
Maybe not. Or maybe in the similar time.
It was the same time.
Yeah.
But no, it was Robbie Robb. Yeah.
What has been the key ingredient? And this is important for young artists listening there. I mean, this is a local music show. And I always try to point artists in a direction to say, listen, we can't give you the answers, but we can give you a shape of where you should be heading. What has been the key ingredients that you think has defined most of the successful artists that you have found so far?
Fearlessness.
Personality-wise, musically?
Just musically fearless.
Yeah.
Able to push it to its limits and beyond. I mean, there are many bands and artists that did that. Asylum Kids are a very good example of that. They really pushed the boundaries of live performance in a time in South Africa which was very repressive.
Yeah.
And they had no compunction about standing up on stage and shouting and rioting on stage against the system.
Yeah.
Or whether it was Leslie Ray Dowling doing these beautifully obscure songs with these wonderful chord changes. She was completely fearless as a singer.
It's a good thing that you picked up on there, because especially in the 70s and 80s, the largest part, and I would say almost most of the music industry, was generally violently opposed to the system at the time. And they spoke through music, to the choices that they made. Because I remember the 80s, and I remember going to some of the big concerts that were held in the 80s, and there was more mixed rosters than there are today, even back in the 80s. Do you remember the 5FM birthday bashes? You could see Mash Latini and PJ Powers all on the same stage with Rebecca and with everyone.
Well, throughout that period, 70s and 80s, great music was being made by people with no fear.
Yeah.
And they did speak out against the system, whether it was Void on Urban Warrior talking about the migrant labor system, or whether it was Bright Blue and Weeping talking about repression. We everyone has this kind of concept about that time that we were all completely separate. We weren't. We were completely integrated, because that's the beauty of music. Music integrates you by its nature.
Yeah.
And it overcomes any racial or political or religious or economic or kind of barriers. Music brings people together through its expression.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of great artists. Sadly, you don't, and I must say this, you don't see that now.
Yeah.
You don't see a lot of integration musically anymore. Everything seems to be in its own little groove.
I think art is not as brave anymore in terms of expression.
No.
So lyrically, everything has also been toned down to safe.
To fit the record company.
Yeah, safe.
Just picking up on what you said earlier about the industry, there were only a handful of labels that were progressive.
Yeah.
The majority of the labels were as conservative as anybody.
So they played it safe.
They played it very, very safe. There's always been that struggle between pop music as an art form to make money, and pop music as an art form to make revolution.
Yeah, and expression and
Absolutely.
everything that we are. Yeah.
So Weir Records was very, when we opened in 76, there was still, you couldn't have mixed parties.
Yeah.
You had to have separate toilets, etc. We just went out and broke all of those rules, because those are the type of people that we were and always will be.
Yeah.
We were normal people in an abnormal society.
Absolutely.
And so what we implemented was normality. We got raided, and they watched us, and they used to sit outside our offices when we had mixed parties, and sometimes they would walk into the parties. You could always spot them.
Yeah.
They were in plain clothes, but they always had a schnorr, they always had like a moustache, and they always had short hair, and they would
there was a type.
You could see them straight, and you could see them at the gigs as well.
Yeah. But I think I always had that, even the record industry, is that we could tell non-record industry people.
Oh yeah.
It was always like the easiest thing to spot in any function.
Yeah, absolutely. You can always, absolutely.
Back to the ingredients of successful artists. Do you think luck also plays a part in terms of when and where that artist is discovered? That the right person at the right time discovers the right artist, and if they're there at the wrong time, that artist may not have been discovered.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, luck plays a huge. Luck and vision work very hand. They're bedfellows.
Yeah.
If you don't, you can't have the vision, and you can't, without the luck. The luck comes with it. Sometimes the luck comes when you least expect it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can see it coming. You can go and see an artist at a gig and go, this is going to be huge. When Roddy Quinn came to my office in '89, I wanted him to manage Mark Alex. I'd signed Mark Alex. And Mark Alex were revolutionary in the sense that they were the first black South African band to really break out in the pop market.
And it was a big hit also.
Quick.
Yeah.
Classic. When I heard Quick, I knew that was that was it, #1 record, But Roddy came because I went to the office and I wanted him to sign Mark Alex to manage. I needed management. And we did the deal, and then I said, where are you going? He said, well, I have to go because I've got to go meet Robert Schroeder and go to Gallo because Mango Groove signing to Gallo. And I said, really? What? Now I remember Mango from a few years back, and they were this kind of little culty band with this little blonde 14 or 15-year-old girl in the band, and they were kind of was nothing really special about it. And he said, yeah, we've done some videos and there's some investors. I said, oh, have you got the videos? He said, I've got the videos. So I said, okay, cool. Show me the video. He showed me Hellfire, Dance Some More. I knew straight away.
It was going to happen, yeah.
I said to him, get Robert on the phone. Robert on the phone. Robert, don't sign with Gallo. Sign with us. What do you need? What are they offering you? He gave me. I said, I will offer you this. I knew, but I didn't know how big. I knew they were going to be big. I would have been happy with the gold record. The fact that it did, I think, 400,000
copies was massive. Yeah.
Was massive. So there's that moment. And also Mango, luck. They were there at the right time, at the dawn of liberation, at the dawn of democracy. Mango come out with Special Star. Boom. You remember the video?
Absolutely, yeah.
Boom. That was it. That became the soundtrack to our conversion to democracy.
Yeah, and also, I mean, a very iconic track and a song that even now still sparks a lot of nostalgia because of what it meant at the time that it came out. It gave us hope.
Oh, absolutely.
Everybody, at that time.
Whenever you're 100% right. It reminded us of a time when we all stood together on the streets, together, and I think we all believed we were going to be okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
Amazing band. I mean, I saw them at Prime Fest recently.
And Roddy's still working with the band. That's amazing, right?
Well, I mean, he works with them in the sense that he books them.
Yeah.
I think that they manage themselves now. But I mean, it's
hence my very careful phrasing of that particular line. But back to Key Ingredients, two eccentric artists which I want to mention because I know them both really well. Moritz Lotz and Neil Solomon. He did Six String Razor with Moritz, and Neil, his last solo album, Magic Man.
Yeah.
What would they like to work with back in the day?
Well, Neil's an interesting one because he's one of my dearest friends, and I love him so much. I was with him a couple of weeks ago, and I met Neil at the Half Jack bar in Umhlanga.
Yeah.
I went down for some reason I went to Durban or for some promo thing. I landed up looking for a drink at the Umhlanga Sands Hotel, and I walked into the Half Jack bar, and he was sitting playing guitar and everything, and we got talking and everything, and he said, come up and jam with me, and I went up and played bass and jammed him. I signed him, and we put out The Stranger, we put out Roxy Lady and Junk Fizz and stuff like that. And he is one of the most genuinely talented writers in South African music. Besides being just a great human being.
He is a great human being, that's for sure.
Neil is just one. He's always stayed true to what he's believed in. He's never followed trends. He's written what he felt was right for him as an artist, and I admire that. Now, Murray, I mean, I knew Murray because I'd used him on sessions.
Yeah.
And he was, and still is, a phenomenal guitar player.
Yeah, the most unbelievable
can
guy
play
to
anything.
get into a session. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, you know that, 15 minutes, Murray.
Yeah, that's it.
And so he came with the 6-string Razor concept, and I loved that. We did this crazy video with Paul Ariel and everything. I mean, the album didn't sell.
Yeah.
I mean, radio wasn't set up for a record like that.
Yeah, sure.
But very eclectic, and I've used him so many times. Also a wonderful human being as well.
Well, the reason I asked you about those two guys is, I mean, I met Neil, I think I must have been 22 years old when I met Neil, and I played him like a few of my songs, and Neil fell in love with my songs and said, you have to record these. And it took me years to do it, and eventually I recorded 2 albums with Neil, and Moritz played guitar on both those albums. So I found it very interesting that our paths have crossed in so many different ways over the years.
Yeah.
And we've only actually got to work together now. But we're thankful for that. So
yeah, I mean, he is the guitarist. I mean, he's the go-to guy.
Yeah.
Murray,
Yeah.
And Neil is the go-to guy if you want a really a producer with empathy.
Yeah, that's it. We'll just understand, let you do your thing.
Yeah.
Now, your second choice on SA Music Box Benj is Coalfield Monday. Leave the Bones off Ceremony. Why did you choose that track?
Because it was one of those moments when I so wanted to sign an artist.
Yeah.
And how that came about is I had gone to see a friend of mine, Kim Saville, in Cape Town. And she said, there's this girl that's touting this record. She's got a manager, and she's her and her husband are looking for a manager. I said, well, I don't manage people. But she came to Kim's office, and I met her, and I was she thought I was arrogant, and I thought she was arrogant. And so they said, I said, I don't manage us. They said, well, here, listen to the record anyway. Took it back.
You have
to
a bit of a
Joburg.
standoff there.
No, it was kind of like, if you know Cofield's is a very strong personality. Anyway, I took the CD back to Joburg, and I think it was a Sunday night. I poured a glass of wine. I went and sat outside and said, I might as well listen to this, Stuck
Give it a
on.
spin. Yeah.
Give it a spin. Heard Leave the Bones. I just was absolutely blown away because it's so simple and so emotional. It's an emotional performance. And this is, to me, the kernel of what making a great record is getting the right emotional performance. Technicality, yes, that comes into it, but it's not the most important ingredient.
The hardest thing to get is that emotion, and it's the special stars that have it.
And I heard Leave the Bones,
Yeah.
and I went into my bedroom and phoned Kim, got Cofield's number, phoned up and said, hi, remember me? And I really want to sign you. And we became very, very close. And we are still very close. I mean, she lives in America now. And we did 2 albums together. We did Ceremony, and then she kind of went to Sony for a while, and then she went to America, and she did The Big Question. And I mean, she gets a lot of airplay on Hot.
Fantastic. Well, that was a good spotting, because this is a fantastic song, and it's yet another moment that obviously in your musical career that stands out, because you remember the exact time.
Oh, I remember
place,
the exact
all
time,
of that.
and it's a record I go back to often.
Yeah.
I'll take the album out and I'll play it from back to. There's not one bad song on there.
Right.
Because it's a beautifully emotional and authentic album, and I love that in musicians.
Fantastic. For the audience out there, that's Benjy Mudie's second track on SA Music Box tonight, Coffee Monday, with Leave the Bones, off the beautiful album that he's talking about. It's called Ceremony, right here on the SA Music Box.
Walk right in, don't give a damn. Take what you need and just leave the bones. If I could tell you what makes the heart break, what makes the...
Welcome back to the SA Music Box. Our guest tonight is Benjy Mudie, and he's unpacking everything. The entire wardrobe is coming out here tonight, Benj. The entire wardrobe. It's a big wardrobe.
Including the flares.
Yes, exactly. Do you still have any of those shirts, by the way?
Oh, I was known in the 80s for the most garish shirts ever, long before Madiba came out with his. No, I don't. I have the pictures, unfortunately.
Well, at least you have something. Benj, in the new age of music, we spoke a lot about the history of music, but in the new age of SA music, and let's talk about the last 5 years specifically. What do you think, and we spoke about special ingredients and stardust and all these beautiful words, what do you think is standing out right now?
If you had asked me a year ago or 2 years ago, I would have said nobody, because I find it all anemic and one-dimensional. I'm happy to say that, obviously through my experience of being on a radio show and getting lots of stuff coming to me, there's a lot of great artists out there. I mean, I love Digby and the Lullaby.
So
now that
Yeah.
has absolute magic. All New We,
Yeah.
although it's very retro, very 80s,
Yeah.
his voice is absolutely
When
phenomenal.
I first heard them, I actually thought it was a new Parlotones song. That's what my instinct was.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, is this the Parlotones? But it was very melodic. It just nailed immediately.
Well, they remind me a little bit of sort of Alphaville meets Aha.
Yeah.
With a kind of OMD feel to it.
Yeah.
I really like them. Let me just think who else out there at the moment. Rowan Ash, I think, has got a... Now, that's authentic. That's an authentic singer. You can hear it. I mean, that's really cool. The problem I have generally with the industry right now is the lack of artist development. Over a period. Everything is single track. We were talking about this earlier. Single track driven. Now, pop music has always been crowned with the singles. Singles have always been very, very important. But it was also important to build careers through strategic marketing on an album.
Thematics and dramatics and theatrics.
Absolutely.
David Bowie, and if you think about, some of the big themed albums in the world, in the history of the world.
But you don't find that now. Everything is fitting very safely into a box right now.
Yeah.
And particularly, for instance, let's take rock. Rock is anemic at the moment. There's no revolution. What we need is another Rage Against the Machine, or we need another Asylum Kids, or a Nirvana.
Something to disrupt.
Something to, exactly. And I love that word,
Yeah.
disruptive. Rock always has to be disruptive.
Anti-establishment to some degree, right?
And revolutionary.
Well,
and
that
we're
takes
not
you
seeing
back. That takes you back right to the point where you started with Void, which is what you were trying to do and express at the time, even as an artist, isn't it?
Well, if Void
No, I'm talking about not Evoid, before that.
Oh, before with Void. Oh,
Yeah.
oh, you mean my version of Void?
Yes.
Before they became famous and I missed out.
Yeah.
We did crazy things because that's the way of getting attention, and we love to indulge in that. And you know, believe it or not, being from the East Rand, I was quite an insular boy. So performing on stage let this wild guy, this animal out.
Unleash the beast.
Absolutely, and I loved it. And I've no doubt that if you strapped a bass around my neck and plugged me in with a band, I'd probably start leaping around as well
And
now.
doing the same thing.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
in your DNA. You mentioned Rowan Ash. We had him on the show a few weeks ago doing a live Unplugged. And Sean, who's behind the cameras, we were astounded with the level that Rowan Ash is at. And when he sat in the studio, he was an international star. And you just get this vibe from everything that he did and how he performed. There was something special about
Well, I
it.
think he needs to go to Nashville.
Yeah.
That's what he needs to do. The problem is that that being in South Africa and so far away from the international stage, we become myopic.
Yeah.
There's only one, you know, people, all musicians have dreams of stardom.
Yeah.
But you have to make it happen for yourself. And you can't do it from here. We're too far away.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to be coming through Joburg and looking for artists. You've got to go there. So you've got to take your hat off to the late Johnny Clegg, right? And you've got to take your hat off to Seether, who went out and did something, and other artists that have gone out and done
Or even Miriam before that. You know,
absolutely,
so,
and Hugh and
yeah.
all of that. But they had no option but to go
Yeah.
because of the political situation. But you know, you need Rowan. I think is incredibly talented, and I mean, I can hear him on that TV series Nashville. I mean,
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I think he's got a link to Nashville now, and I think he's certainly going to do everything to ensure
Good.
that he
good.
takes that break that he's got, and he's going to do it. And talking about ambitions, do you still have ambitions of breaking an artist outside South Africa, especially now in the age of digital where, I mean, back in the day when you were at We Are, right? I mean, I remember the music, you had a big artist here, and you send that demo tape or that record across the US, it sits on an exec's desk, and the first question, well, how big are they in South Africa? And if you didn't have an answer, they wouldn't even listen to it.
Even if you were big in South Africa, you had two issues working against you concurrently. The first one was a political situation.
Yeah.
It didn't matter how good you were. If, for instance, you were a white pop band, you didn't have a hope in hell of being signed by any of the labels. The second one was the production value.
Yeah.
We were miles ahead or miles behind on production in the actual physical sound.
I would agree with that, because if you go back to the 70s and 80s and you listen to a lot of the stuff that we recorded locally versus what was being recorded, there was a difference. And then that phrase came out in the 90s and 2000s. It's like, very good sound for a local band.
I hate that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Remember
know,
that phrase?
Yeah. I hate the word local.
Yeah.
I've always hated it. People say not bad for a local band.
Yeah.
But the thing is that and the reason that the production values were not as good is very simple, because of the headspace.
Yeah.
Because there was not a flow of ideas and influences coming into the country because of the political situation, we got left behind on production values, on how to mic something. So it's almost as if we were still working on 8-track and they were working on 24-track as a comparison.
Yeah.
So that was the problem. Luckily, Mark Alex got released, Void got released, National Wake got released, and Mango got released. None of them sold gazillions of records. They all made a little bit of a dent, particularly Mango made a bit of a dent over there. But the Americans didn't know what to make of it. Because, you know, particularly because everybody wants to be big in America, because it's the biggest market. Do I have an ambition to break an artist worldwide? Not really. I have an ambition, and it will stay with me my entire life, is to find another artist that really gets me going, that touches my heart.
That's never going to stop, right?
No.
That's now
It'll
ingrained in your DNA.
It's ingrained in me. You know, I kind of, at the end of 2013, when I'd worked for Universal as an A&R consultant, setting up their South African music division. I did the 4 years there. We had the Elvis Blues success, we had the Kaya success, the David Van Buren, the Arrows, and everything.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was on a roll and everything, and then I walked away from it
because
I felt it was time. And I said, "That's it. I'm finished with it." Ha 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 ha.
Yeah, I mean, listen, dare I say it? At the point you worked with a few people in that particular organization who would not have seen the vision that you've always had.
No.
And
we won't mention the name.
That's the best way I'd say
but
it.
But it was more than that. I felt that I could see the change that was coming was going to be single track driven, no artist development, and the money became first. And that's not why I got into music
in the first place.
In the first place. So I walked away from it on my own terms, and I was happy with it. And then I started to hear people. And I still do. And I mean, I went, as you probably know, I recently co-produced with Matthew Fink my father-in-law's album at 82 years old.
Lance James.
And we did a record with blues and soul, and we covered Metallica and everything. And that was so inspiring. So now I'm kicking back and I'm going, someone's going to come along. And I mean, I get it all the time. People send me demos, mothers phone me, I want your dad, and I'm always kind to people.
Listen, I completely relate to that because I have the same thing. My thing was always about discovering new music or giving music an opportunity that I thought maybe had a semblance of a chance and that deserved to be heard. That was always my thing. Does it deserve to be heard? And listening to the current roster of music we're playing, even on the station, we're talking about production values. Production values have gone up. There is no difference between us and the rest of the world. We are producing amazing music, and especially in the R&B, hip-hop space, things are really progressing. You're right about the rock space. Nothing's really broken out of the last 10 years that's really stood out as brand new and unique. Right? And we do have challenges in other areas, but a large part of it is stemming from an endemic music industry problem, which comes back to development. And you spoke about the record companies and major labels. I worked in a major label. I was generally found myself at odds with them in terms of the thinking always, because I could see that A&R and development was starting to fade, and people were not as interested. Now record companies look to mine artists. Artists have done 90% of the work to get a base following. The record company goes in and then pulls it out, packages it, destroys everything that was authentic about it, and it fizzles out within a couple of days.
And then they get dropped.
You
see, the days of believing in an artist and signing them because you believe that their greatest work was still to come, those days are gone. You stuck with them. I stuck with Falling Mirror for 4 records. Only one of them was marginally successful. I would have done another 10 records and not sold any because I loved what they did. But getting back to the point is that when the creative spirit comes against commerciality and money and big label power, there's always a clash there. And back in the day, you were able to overcome that because being creative and working with artists was of paramount importance. That's gone now. You're right, it's gone. And it's very, very sad. And I don't want to be part of that. But that doesn't take away from the fact that one day, it could happen this afternoon, it could happen next week, someone is going to bring me something, I'm going to go, wow, that's amazing. How can I help you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, exactly that, yeah.
And I'll do it for the passion of it. Certainly don't do it for the money.
You mentioned Leslie Ray Darling. It's your third choice on the SA Music Box. A song called Will I Ever Get Over You? Now, this must have some sort of emotional connection to it.
Oh, big. It's a long story, so I'm going to keep it short. Leslie took a 5-year sabbatical after When the Night Comes. And she was burnt out. I mean, she had been from 1981 to around, I think, about 1986, 87. She had been the leading South African female singer, a wonderful, wonderful woman, very quirky. And again, I've had a very long relationship with her. So at the end of it, she said, Benj, I really want to take a break. I said, well, how long do you want? Like 6 months or whatever? She said, no, I'll phone you. And then she never phoned me. And so every often I would phone her and go on the farm and Stellies and say, Les, are you ready to record? She'd go, no. no, not feeling it. And years went by. And eventually out of nowhere, she called me one day and she said, Luister, because she speaks half English, half Afrikaans, she says, I'm ready to do another record. I've written this bunch of songs, but I've got some demands. I said, okay, what is it? So I want you to record it down here. So I said, okay, fine. She said, and I want to do it on my farm. And I want to sit with you and choose the players.
Now she laid it down, eh?
She laid it down. So I went, okay, nothing's too impossible. We moved what was then Bop Studios.
Yeah.
We trucked it.
Yeah.
With Alan Lazar as producer,
Yeah.
Stephen Cooks as engineer, and myself as head of A&R.
Alan Lazar, wow. Lalela now.
And we moved to Stellenbosch to the farm called the Grote Zalze.
Yeah.
And as musicians, we had the aforementioned Maritz Lotz.
Yeah.
We had Sipho Gumedi on bass.
Yeah.
We had Alan on keyboards, and we had Ian Herman from Tananas on drums.
Fantastic. That's a super band.
Yeah. And we put it up in the barn with bales of hay and everything. We started recording. We recorded Possession and Custodian and all these wonderful tracks. And at night, we drank lots of wine and got absolutely pissed and had a great time. And then the next morning, there was one song that she had written called Will I Ever Get Over You? And we had tried it several times, and it just wasn't gelling.
Yeah.
So we would move on. Out of the blue, Leslie's mother died. And after telling all the music, I gathered the musicians and said, look, I think we're going to call it a day. We can't continue, And I went to Leslie and I said, we're going to go. We'll work this out later. And she said, no, I want to keep recording. So I said, okay, fine. And then what happened was that Ian Herman came out from a little smoke break into the barn.
Inspired smoke
An
break.
inspired smoke break came in, and he started laying down this groove. Very simple hi-hat snare. So, and you'll hear it on there. And then all of a sudden, Maritz came in, and then Sipho Gumedi came in, and then Alan came in, and this groove just developed. It was the most, and I sat there, and Leslie suddenly walked in, and she just walked right past the desk into the vocal booth, which was bales of hay, and then she sang the opening line, "Will I ever get over
With
you?"
all that emotion.
With all that emotion,
All that energy that's building in the studio.
and I remember sitting. I wish I'd videoed it, and I said to Stephen Cooks, "Are you taking this?" He said, "Yeah," and it just went for 6 minutes.
Yeah.
Alan played the most incredible, organic, unrehearsed piano solo that was so South African it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And right at the end, you can hear it on the track. It kind of slowly peters out until it's just a little groove left, and it was finished. And then we all wept. Every single one of us wept.
Yeah.
And I went, oh my God. That I think in my entire career was the most emotive moment. And we played it back, and we couldn't believe it. We had taken this track. And you can hear it. You can hear us sing.
But you captured it.
And we captured it. So that's why I've chosen it. It's probably because of that. And there's another one where we did when we were back up in Bop, and we mixed the record in Bop. And then Leslie said to me, Benjy, she said, do you know, you're always telling me to play the blues. I said, Josh, she said, well, let's do a blues song after dinner. So we got Frot.
Yeah.
And then we went into the studio, and I went and got a Robert Johnson CD, and I put on Stones in My Pathway, and we played it. Maritz got the tuning right, and Maritz and I and Leslie went into the studio. Maritz sat down, started playing, she started singing, and you could hear her laughing, and she sang the most amazing blues track, and I was the engineer pressing the buttons and everything. So those are the kind of things that happen in recording. That make
unforgettable moments.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why Will I Ever Get Over You, when I play it, it just takes me back to that moment.
Well, I want to thank you, and I'm sure the audience is very appreciative of you sharing that particular story. Because I think people don't always get to know what goes behind some of the magic that they eventually hear. It's not in those days, it wasn't as easy also, because moving a studio wasn't like now where it's a digital disc. It was tape. It was all sorts of things going down, right?
We had the synclavier. We moved to synclavier there. I mean, you're not supposed to move synclaviers, which is, the sampling keyboard. I mean, we had a Pantechnicon with support staff and everything on this farm for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, it was amazing. I mean, these
It
sort of things were never...
probably costed a little.
It cost a little, but it won, I think, 5 SAMAs that year.
Yeah.
And we
It was
got,
worth it.
yeah, and we got the album released by We Are Worldwide, and we went and played at the South African Embassy in London. And there was this whole thing about her in London, and then she turned her back on it.
Yeah.
Said, I don't want to do it.
As a classic artist would.
Yeah.
Thank you for that story, Benji. This is Benjy Mudie's third and final choice on the SA Music Box. You've heard the story behind it, the evergreen Lately Ray Darling with Will I Get Over You from Unbounded Waters.
Will I ever get over you? Time heals, but I don't know. Will I ever get over you?
Welcome back to the SA Music Box, and that was the third and final choice from Benjy Mudie. He spoiled us today with some very eclectic song choices. Benji, thank you for sticking around after your show to stay with me in the studio. Normally, I'm sneaking off at about this time to get a peanut butter sandwich from the kitchen. I'm always talking about food.
Well, you see, I always get to listen to you on the way home.
Yes, you're very fortunate. Benj, final word for artists, wannabe artists, existing artists, managers, record label execs, independent or major, otherwise. What do we need to do in this country to ensure that the music industry stays vibrant and healthy? What is your take on that?
Be original. That's, in a nutshell, is what it's all about, is be original. Don't be scared to step outside of the box. You create your own audience. Record companies don't create your audience for you.
Yeah.
Radio doesn't create your audience for you. You create your audience. I mean, how else would somebody like Kate Bush have been successful? Or even Leslie Ray Dowling, or anybody that is eclectic, Tori Amos or anything like that. If you have a talent to write or to sing or to perform, in a manner that you feel comfortable with, because what I think audiences are looking for, fans are looking for authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
And they can spot a fake a mile away.
Yeah.
That's why this current crop, and I'm going to say this current crop of pop music that's coming out worldwide will be forgotten in 5 years. You won't even remember half of the people.
Yeah.
And in 10 years...
You won't remember most of the songs either. So.
But I remember the Beatles, I remember Queen, I remember Zeppelin, I remember Aretha Franklin. But be original. Most important, to make a statement and to believe in that and do it for the love, for the passion of music, and not to be a pop star or to make money. Those are all byproducts of being original and authentic.
Absolutely. I agree with that, Benji, and thank you for sharing that with the audience. I think that's the secret to the industry. If you go back in time, it's originality that was it always found its way up to the top.
Your audience will find you.
Benji, thank you for being a guest on the show.
Pleasure.
And thank you for sharing this with us. It's going out on Hot TV, as you know. So everyone will get to learn a lot more than what they already knew.
Why did I not get makeup then?
Hey?
Why didn't I get makeup if we're going on
No,
TV?
the makeup is all saved for me only because I need it. And you look in fine form. So
Thanks, Ivan.
right, sure, Benj.
Rock on.
And that concludes SA Music Box with Benjy Mudie selecting his 3 songs. We'd like to thank him for being our guest. He's an outstanding treasure of South African music, and he's done so much that you actually can't list it on a list. And we're very thankful to have had him in this country.
Hot 91.9.
Playing the best old school and R&B.